Okay, all right, so today's video is about the supply schedule, which includes the idea of the halving and then the Bitcoin in circulation. And in the last video, we talked about this process here, this iterative process that miners go through to gather block data, run it through the SHA-256 hash, iterate the nonce, and repeat. This is the process of mining. And then this video is going to be about about these two items here, the supply and then the reward that comes with mining new blocks. So this will be the specifics, the details of how Bitcoin comes to be, how it's issued to the network. It's called the supply schedule, and then why do miners seek Bitcoin as a reward? And it'll be the next video. We'll talk about why Bitcoin is considered a store of value, why it has value, similar to why gold has value. So, okay, ignore this blue line for now. We are going to look at this orange line, and it's showing us over time the total amount of Bitcoin that is in circulation. And the total amount that will ever exist is here, just under 21 million. And you can't see it here, but these are actually straight lines. It's just a bunch of straight lines combined together. Then it'll be about, and this will increase. This continues to increase until the year 2140, and then after that, no more Bitcoin is introduced into circulation. And we're about to zoom into this so you can see this. You can see the straight lines a little better. So this black line is showing the same thing, shorter time period. And these are supposed to be straight lines, and this here represents. So this is the subsidy. Then as of this point, this is the total amount of Bitcoin that's in circulation total. So this is what has been issued and is in circulation. Uh, and that's as of these dates is when this change in supply happened. These dates are called the halvings, and the halvings occur every 210,000 blocks, and the math works out to just under 4 years. Uh, since Bitcoin started, though, it's been a little bit faster. That's why you see this is about 3 years. A month or two shorter than 4, and it's just because of the initial block times on average have been a tad faster than 10 minutes. So at these points here, what exactly is changing and what is happening at the halving? And what's changing is the amount of Bitcoin that is paid to miners who find the target hash value. So again, this is what we talked about in our last presentation is, miners take in all the transaction data and they run it through the SHA-256 hash, and they iterate this billions and trillions of times looking for this target hash here with the required number of leading zeros. And the first miner that does this is going to be rewarded with this amount of Bitcoin. Right now it's 6.25 Bitcoin. It's going to drop here in about a week to 3.125. And in fact, we're pulling over. So we're going to go back to mempool right now to look at this. Let's pull this up. Okay, so we can see this is the difficulty. Right now it's averaging over 10 minutes, so we expect it to this to go down in about 13 days. And then you can click on this and you can see the halving information. So we've got, this will be the new subsidy once it happens. Here's how many blocks until it does happen. And here's the expected date, which is about a week from now. And let's go to the latest block. And this block was actually a while ago, 31 minutes ago. And this is the target hash value of that block. I believe this is going to be 19 zeros. And then we go down here, and this is the amount of transaction fees that were paid to the miner. And if you add the transaction fee plus 6.25, you're going to get the answer 7.425. And then down here you see this is also, both of these combined are 7.425. This is called the Coinbase transaction. This is what the Bitcoin software pays to the miners who find the target hash. Again, the reward is currently 6.25. And so, and I guess to back up again, when a miner finds the required hash value, the required number of leading zeros, so it's going to send all of this block data, it's going to send the successful hash, and it's going to send their Bitcoin address out to the network. So full nodes are going to get all of this information, and they're the ones who are going to enforce these rules and approve this special Coinbase transaction if it's a valid block. They'll authorize the first transaction in that block. Here it is again. The first transaction, the latest block, these are the addresses that the miner provided. This was the Bitcoin reward plus the transaction fees that were sent as the incentive, as the reward incentive to the miner. So when Bitcoin first started, the reward was 50, and then on this schedule, it gets cut in half every 210,000 blocks. And this time frame, the 4 years, this is predictable thanks to the difficulty adjustment, and this is actually super important because it's this time predictability that ensures that Bitcoin can solve the value trap. So many videos ago, we covered how gold solves the value trap. Bitcoin also solves this problem. We're going to go into that in a future video, but the predictability is super important. And then these are just some numbers on how Bitcoin is put into circulation, how it's issued. You know, all new Bitcoin initially come from or start in this Coinbase transaction to a miner address. And during the first 4 years of Bitcoin's existence, this was the total amount of Bitcoin that was put into circulation. And then, you know, these numbers represent the amount of Bitcoin put into circulation during those 210,000 blocks. And then this is just the cumulative that was issued, or the cumulative that is now in circulation. So once they're in circulation, you know, a miner can hold them, just save them for later, or send the Bitcoin to someone else. And when it comes to how many are in circulation, based on the date today, we're in April 2024, there have already been more than 20 million Bitcoin issued. And then again, here's the total number that there will ever be. See, it's just a tad short of 21 million. And as a quick side note, because I get this question a lot, this chart is several months old, but I think you'll still get the point. So Satoshi Nakamoto mined around 1 million, we think, Bitcoin, and those are expected to never move. There's a known 3 to 4 million that are lost, and this is because in the early days people were just careless with their private keys. And then there's you know, 1 million, 1.5 million when this chart was made that are left to be unmined. And really the lion's share of the Bitcoin that's out there exists with just individuals like you and I who have private keys. You know, we have private keys that we're keeping safe, and Bitcoin on those and Bitcoin with those private keys. Then over here in the top left, you see these are, you know, large companies, governments. The FBI has like 200,000. These are exchanges. And another question I get is what exactly does it mean to be, you know, in circulation? Well, you know, some people just take their Bitcoin and they just put their secret key in a safe place and they just hold it for a very long period of time. And that Bitcoin is, you know, it's not circulating daily, but it's still in existence. Or you can go to an exchange and you can trade your dollars for Bitcoin, or vice versa, or some businesses accept it as payment. There are certain countries where you know, many businesses accept it. But I think this is this slide here is very useful information. This is from a Chainalysis report. There are about 100 million, you know, bona fide, genuine Bitcoin users, and we'll look at these 3 categories of users. So this category here is peer-to-peer. These are 2 people transacting with each other using Bitcoin, and this is mostly occurring in low to middle income countries. So these are places where They have relatively decent access to technology, and they also have a banking system, or really just their trust in government in general, government functions. There's like a medium to high fragility with whatever their cash construct is, or banking, their government. I mean, Ukraine just, there's been a war in Ukraine. So that that makes sense. Ukraine's had a bad experience with banking recently, so Bitcoin has really ticked up. And then in this table here, this is individuals going to a website, some kind of centralized exchange. So you can think FTX before it imploded a while back, but nowadays there's still Coinbase out there, River, Swan, and so on. So you go to these websites and you're buying cryptocurrency with your government issued money, or vice versa, exchanging it. And I need to point out that this report was focused on all of cryptocurrency, not just Bitcoin, but Bitcoin's also the largest cryptocurrency by market cap. So there's some nuances here, but for the most part, I think this is representative enough. And then moving on to this last ranking. So this last ranking is, I think of this as essentially professional money. So this is going to include very large businesses or very, very wealthy individuals. These entities are moving billions of dollars worth of Bitcoin on a regular basis. You see, the United States is towards the top of this list, and that's a good thing, I think. Okay, so we covered the supply schedule, the halvings, and what Bitcoin in circulation looks like. But I want to cover this one also because I find this really interesting. On this curve here, this convergence towards 21 million. This is a very deliberate and specific way to achieve a supply cap. And on top of that, Satoshi Nakamoto, who created this, did not give any explanation about this. So I think it's still useful to ask, why this specific and deliberate concept. So we start with just a few things that we do know about this, and the only mention of miner rewards, and really the only mention of any type of economic considerations for Bitcoin, comes in the white paper in this section 6, incentives. And we'll start with this statement. So the second part of this, or the last two words, inflation free, just another way of saying that there's gonna be a cap to the supply. 21 million is a supply cap, but the white paper did not mention 21 million, just a supply cap. And the other concept that's called out is this idea that the incentive for miners, we want to transition this away from block rewards. We eventually want the miner incentive to be based entirely on transaction fees. And then the other area emphasized is nodes having incentives to protect the network. And so there's a large theme in the white paper and within Bitcoin itself. A large theme is the ability to survive attacks, the ability to survive. Probably every single aspect of Bitcoin, you can trace it back to it's doing some kind of defense or survival mechanism. Bitcoin is optimized for survivability. So the idea that we have, we need nodes, or miners or users. We need them to protect the network, to protect Bitcoin. They have to have the right incentives to do that. And then lastly, we haven't covered this one yet, but this is called proof of work. We're going to do some videos on this. It's analogous to mining precious metals. For example, when it comes to gold mining, the value of gold in the long run ends up on average is the same as the value of work that went to mine it. And that's due to gold and commodities in general, just the prices being set in a free market basis. And okay, so let's start from the top, the supply cap. So we have a number that we're not going to go any higher than, and you can even ignore the 21 million for now. This is just a simple fact, because we've got a number and it's going to be capped at this number. We're not going any higher. I think that's pretty straightforward. But then the next question, why why this path here? Why such a specific and deliberate curve to this? Why not just do a straight line, or just go put them all together at once? Issue them all out at once and have them all right away. So the short answer is, no one knows, but I do think it's helpful to analyze this concept against the main points that we know that were brought up in the white paper when it comes to incentives, and then to look at proof of work, which I think offers some insight as well. So bring back over mempool for a second. Let's go back to the latest block. Let's see. Looks like we got a new one recently. Okay, so we're in the latest block now, and again we've got these transaction fees that are going to miners, and we've got the 6.25. So you add those two together. These are the two ways that miners are rewarded: the block subsidy plus the transaction fees. So what this point is saying is that we want the transaction fees to go up. We want them to eventually be the only incentive for miners. We want the block subsidy, we want this to go down, and then it's eventually, it's going to go away. And with no subsidy, transaction fees only, now you can maintain a cap supply. So now let's look at this piece of the curve here, this point here specifically, and let's look at it in terms of slopes. So we have a point here. So we have high slopes, they're all greater than 1. Then at this point here, the slopes all become less than 1. They turn into a slow crawl. So if you look at the second half of this curve, from a miner point of view, this is optimized for a smooth transition away from block rewards and towards fees. It's very gradual. It's a very smooth transition. This small slope, small amounts of change. Compare that to these other two slope options. You would have this, and all of a sudden you'd hit a massive rate change once you reached your supply cap, and then late changes, they're never going to be good. Or I'm sorry, large changes will never be good for nice smooth transitions. And now let's look at the first half of this curve. So this was, let's think of this almost as like a trial phase, or getting someone motivated to enter into a product type phase. And again, no one really knows if this was the intentionality of the design, but with this design here, you're giving both the miners and the users the best case scenarios. The miners are getting a high subsidy, even though they're not getting transaction fees, they're getting high block rewards. And the users of Bitcoin are not having to pay transaction fees because the miners are already being rewarded. So again, no one knows if this was the actual design, but it would be a good way to attract all the users that you need into the network. And then once they join the network, they get their hands on Bitcoin. Now they have skin in the game. And with your skin in the game, you have an incentive now to protect Bitcoin, to protect the network, to protect the value that you've already placed in Bitcoin. So although we don't know for sure, I think we can make some reasonable links between this unique concept of supply schedule to the stated goals in the Bitcoin white paper. And then for the last one, we need to change gears on this. We haven't talked about proof of work yet. But real quick, the original proof of work concept suffered from this linkage right here that never got off the ground because it couldn't get past the problems with this linkage. So the idea was, you just take computing power and it counts as money. So if you remember the company we talked about, Hashcash, hash being the hashing work, it was your cash. But there was just too much of a widespread dissemination of computing technology. So you could just make a small investment in a really fast computer, and then you could just get a whole bunch of money, mountains of coins over the long run. So it wasn't equitable, and really this piece was not practical. And also the fixed price was untenable because proof of work was trying to replicate real world work. And you compare this to like real world gold mining. And this concept, the market would always be able to, the price would change. It would be based on market conditions, and the price would then inform miners and buyers and sellers, and allow them to make their decisions, and all their individual decisions would always be adjusting the market price, but the equilibrium was always being found. And the initial versions of proof of work just didn't have that. They were stuck on this fixed price, and more than that, the coins really had no economic construct at all to exist within. So these two issues, proof of work never did get by this. Digital proof of work was not able to be standardized in any significant fashion, or any fashion at all, really, around the world. But when it comes to Bitcoin, first the difficulty adjustment solved this piece. It doesn't matter to the computer. The new blocks for every 10 minutes, and that was that. But now we're getting into this unique slope, the halving, and then ending in a capped supply. So on the one hand, the halving initially is a significant shock to supply and demand, to that price equilibrium free market model. The halvings also don't happen very often. It's every 4 years, and it's also enough time in between so you can make ample forecasts and account for those. And ultimately, what the halving path gives us is, we are locking this supply curve. It's a predictable supply. And the quantity is always changing, but again, it's predictable. The quantity is essentially locked. But the demand curve is not locked. The demand curve is free to change, and therefore the market is free to always settle on a price based on demand. So now we do have the conditions to turn, this curve and the difficulty adjustment. Now we have the conditions to turn any type of computer power into a standardized asset that can provide pricing information, basically linking your computer power to the real world, or linking your real world computer power to digital assets. And then the last item here, let's look at the overall numbers and how they fit together. And we'll start with the number of halvings. There's 33. The first reward, 50, 25, 12. These are all I think easy, human digestible numbers. 21, even 210,000, so on. And then same for the 4-year cycles. And in 10 minutes, the 10-minute block is largely driven by technical considerations. We're going to cover the future, but the number 10 is also, it's simple. And then there's also this symmetry that seems to exist. You've got, the halving is symmetry, 210, 21 million. There's just the symmetry that you find. And the halving itself also, it might not feel comfortable, this dividing by 2. And it takes us, and it's eventually taking us into these really weird looking numbers. But this is where the divisibility of Bitcoin comes in. So now, each Bitcoin, and we haven't covered this yet, but each Bitcoin is divisible by 100 million subunits called sats, which are, sats are short for Satoshi, in honor of Satoshi Nakamoto. And if we take 100 million, multiply it by 50, the reward in sats is 5 billion, 2.5. These numbers are a little less friendly, slightly more abstract, and it's getting better and better. But let's go all the way to the bottom. And after 29 halvings, you end up in single digit Satoshi rewards. And to me at least, this strikes me at least as something that's clean and intentional. It's almost like a pleasantry to this. You have 1 Satoshi, 30-second halving. You're starting with 50 Bitcoin, 100,000 subunits. This is just a very clean, overall clean construct. And so so we have this symmetry, this balance. All these numbers just seem to kind of come together in a way that feels right, or even good. Like you just climbed a mountain, or you're watching the sunset, drinking coffee or something. It's just something that feels good about how they all work together. So there are four stated economic goals of the Bitcoin construct. And in this curve here, in this curve here, as well as the handful of numbers and the idea of halving, which cuts in half the number of new coins added to circulation every 4 years, all these work together to achieve the four stated goals. There will never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. This small slope here, this big slope here, these are ideal for their respective goals. And then lastly, the proof of work is what connects the economics of digital coins with real world resources.